Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. Brothers and sisters, friends, seekers of light. Tonight, I want to take you on a journey. Not an ordinary journey of facts and dates, but a journey into the hidden chambers of a chapter so vast, so profound, that scholars have spent entire lifetimes circling its depths without ever touching its floor. I'm speaking of Surah Al-Baqarah, the longest chapter of the Quran. And tonight we walk through it with the eyes of one of the most extraordinary mystics Islam has ever produced, Sheikh Ibn Arabi, the man they called Al-Sheikh Al-Akbar, the greatest master. Before I begin, let me be honest with you about something, because honesty is the foundation of any real spiritual journey. What I am about to share is not a list of forgotten verses or a secret manuscript pulled from a dusty shelf. It is something far more interesting than that. It is the way Ibn Arabi taught us to read, the lens he polished and handed down to those who came after him, a lens through which the Quran stops being only a book of laws and stories and becomes a living ocean, where every wave carries a message meant just for you, in this moment, in your own heart. So when I say secrets, I mean this. Meanings that lie beneath the surface, meanings that the outward reader passes by like a man walking quickly through a garden at night, never noticing the flowers brushing against his sleeve. Let us begin where the surah itself begins, Alif Lam Meem. 3 letters, no verb, no subject, no sentence in the ordinary sense. For centuries, scholars of outward jurisprudence have said, Allahu A'lam, God knows best what these letters mean, and left it there, respectfully, humbly. But Ibn Arabi could not simply pass over silence like that, because for him, silence in the Quran is never empty. Silence is itself a form of speech. He saw in these letters the very alphabet of creation, the building blocks from which the entire universe of meaning is constructed, the way a single seed contains, folded within it, the entire shape of the tree that has not yet grown. Think about it this way. Before a builder constructs a palace, he does not begin with the palace. He begins with raw materials, stone, wood, iron, materials that, in themselves, do not look like a palace at all. Alif Lam Meem is, in the mystical reading, the raw material of revelation itself, the unformed potential out of which every law, every story, every command in this great surah will be carved. This is the first secret, that the Quran begins not with explanation, but with mystery, because the soul must first be humbled before it can be taught. You cannot pour water into a cup that believes it is already full. These 3 letters strip away your certainty before the surah even speaks a single sentence you can understand. They say to you gently but firmly, you do not know everything, and that not knowing is the doorway through which real knowledge enters. Now we move forward into the surah, and immediately we are given a description of 3 kinds of people, the believers, the disbelievers, and the hypocrites. On the surface, this looks like a simple sociological classification, a way of sorting the population of Medina into neat categories. But Ibn Arabi, and the broader tradition of inward reading that followed him, saw something else entirely. He saw these 3 groups, not only as people walking around outside in the world, but as states existing within a single human heart, shifting, struggling, rising, and falling like tides. This is our second secret, and I want you to sit with it carefully, because it changes everything about how you read these opening verses. The believer, the disbeliever, and the hypocrite are not only your neighbor, your enemy, your distant historical figure from Arabian history. They are 3 possibilities living inside you right now. There are moments when your heart is illuminated, certain, surrendered. That is the believer within you. There are moments when your heart goes hard, sealed, resistant to truth, even when it stares you in the face. That is the disbeliever within you. And there are moments, perhaps the most dangerous of all, when you say one thing with your tongue and carry another thing entirely in your chest. When your prayer is performed, but your presence is absent, that is the hypocrite within you. The surah is not only describing a historical map of Medina, it is describing the topography of your own soul and asking you, with great tenderness, which territory you intend to live in today. This leads us naturally to the story of Adam, peace be upon him. And here, dear listeners, we arrive at something truly extraordinary, something that sits at the very heart of Ibn Arabi's entire vision of existence. When Allah informs the angels that he is placing a successor, a Khalifa upon the earth, the angels respond with a question that has echoed through the centuries. Will you place upon it one who will spread corruption and shed blood, while we glorify you with praise and sanctify you? It is a fair question. It is, in fact, the question every honest person eventually asks about humanity. And yet Allah's answer is not an argument. It is a demonstration. He teaches Adam the names, all of them, and then asks the angels to recite those names back, and they cannot. Then he asks Adam, and Adam recites them with ease. This is the third secret, and it is, I believe, the very pulse of Ibn Arabi's entire teaching. The names taught to Adam represent something far greater than vocabulary. They represent the divine attributes themselves. The names of Allah, His mercy, His power, His knowledge, His subtlety, His majesty, folded into the very structure of the human being. According to this mystical reading, the human being is not simply one creature among many creatures. The human being is a mirror polished to reflect every single one of the divine names simultaneously, something no angel, no mountain, no ocean, no star can do, because each of those things reflects only a portion of the divine reality, while the human heart, when purified, has the capacity to reflect the whole. This is why Ibn Arabi calls the perfected human being al-insan al-kamil, the complete human, not complete in the sense of being flawless, but complete in the sense of being comprehensive, a small universe carrying within it the imprint of every divine quality that exists in the vast universe outside. When you next read the story of Adam, do not read it only as ancient history, read it as a mirror held up to your own face. You were not created small, you were created vast, and the only question that matters is whether you will polish the mirror of your heart until it reflects that vastness, or let it gather the dust of heedlessness until you forget what you actually are. Now we come to a passage that confuses many readers on the surface, and yet, when understood through this inward lens, becomes one of the most beautiful teachings in the entire Quran. I am speaking of the story of the cow, the very story that gives this surah its name. Al-Baqarah. The children of Israel are commanded to slaughter a cow, and instead of simply obeying, they begin to question, what color should it be, what age, what condition, piling question upon question, delay upon delay, until the task that should have been simple becomes nearly impossible. Here is our fourth secret. The cow, in the mystical tradition, becomes a symbol of the nafs, the lower self, the ego that must be sacrificed before true life, symbolized here by the resurrection of the murdered man through striking him with a piece of the slaughtered cow, can occur. Notice the order of events. Death came first because of a hidden crime, a hidden corruption, and life could only be restored after the cow. This symbol of worldly attachment, stubbornness, and material preoccupation was sacrificed. Ibn Arabi taught throughout his life that the ego is not destroyed through violence or self-hatred, but through patient, deliberate sacrifice, choosing again and again to slaughter the impulses that keep us bound to lower desires so that something higher, something truly alive, can be raised within us. The children of Israel's endless questioning is, in this reading, a portrait of every soul that delays its own transformation, asking for more details, more conditions, more excuses, when the real instruction was always simple. Sacrifice what is keeping you from life and stop negotiating with your own resistance. How many of us do exactly this? We know, deep down, what needs to be slaughtered within us. The grudge we refuse to release, the comparison we refuse to stop making, the small lie we tell ourselves about why we cannot change. And like the children of Israel, we ask question after question, not because we genuinely need more clarity, but because clarity is frightening and delay feels safer than transformation. The cow waits patiently in this story, the way your own breakthrough waits patiently for you, for as long as you keep asking what color it should be, instead of simply lifting the knife. And now, dear listeners, we arrive at our fifth and final secret, and I have saved it for the end because I believe it is the secret that holds all the others together like a thread running through a string of pearls. It concerns one of the most quietly powerful verses in the entire Quran, a verse so deceptively simple that many people recite it without ever feeling its full weight. And when my servants ask you concerning me, indeed I am near. I respond to the call of the caller when he calls upon me. Notice something remarkable about the structure of this verse. Allah does not say, tell them I am near. There is no command to relay a message through an intermediary. Allah speaks directly. I am near, I respond, without any instruction to the Prophet to convey it on his behalf. Of all the verses in the Quran concerning prayer and worship, this is one of the rare moments where the curtain seems to lift entirely, where the distance between creator and creation collapses into a single intimate breath. For Ibn Arabi, whose entire spiritual cosmology rests on the idea that nothing in existence is genuinely separate from the divine reality that sustains it, this verse is not simply a comforting promise. It is a description of the actual structure of reality. Nearness here is not metaphorical. It is closer than your jugular vein, closer than the thought arising in your mind right now, closer than the breath you are taking as you listen to these words. This is why, in the mystical tradition, prayer is never understood as a long-distance phone call to a far-off ruler who may or may not answer. Prayer is understood as turning toward what is already present, the way a person standing in bright sunlight does not need to shout across a great distance to be seen. They simply need to turn their face toward the light that is already surrounding them. The tragedy, Ibn Arabi would say, is not that Allah is distant and difficult to reach. The tragedy is that we are the ones who wander, distracted, while nearness waits patiently for us to simply turn around. Brothers and sisters, when you take these 5 secrets together, the humbling mystery of Alif Lam Meem, the 3 states of belief and disbelief and hypocrisy living within your own heart, the vast comprehensiveness of the human being as a mirror of divine names, the necessary sacrifice of the ego symbolized by the cow, and finally the breathtaking nearness of the divine that requires no intermediary to reach, you begin to see that Surah Al-Baqarah is not simply the longest chapter of the Quran. It is a complete map of the spiritual journey, beginning with humility, passing through self-knowledge, rising into the recognition of your own vast capacity, demanding the sacrifice of what holds you back, and arriving finally at the realization that you were never as far from your Lord as you believed yourself to be. This is the gift that Ibn Arabi and the great chain of inward readers who came after him offer us, not a replacement for the outward sciences of the Quran, the rulings, the grammar, the history that scholars have preserved so carefully across the centuries, but a deepening of them, a second layer of light shining through the same glass. The outward meaning teaches you what to do. The inward meaning teaches you who you are while you are doing it. So I ask you tonight, as we close this journey together, which letter of Alif Lam Meem will you sit with this week, allowing its mystery to humble you rather than frustrate you? Which of the 3 states, belief, disbelief, hypocrisy, is quietly ruling your heart today? And what would it take to shift the balance towards sincerity? What names, what divine qualities are waiting within you to be polished and reflected outward into the world through your character, your kindness, your patience? What cow within you needs finally to be sacrificed instead of endlessly negotiated with through excuses and delay? And in this very moment, as these words reach your ears, can you feel, even for a single breath, that nearness the verse describes, not far away in the heavens, but closer than your own heartbeat? This, in the end, is the real secret beneath all the other secrets. The Quran was never meant to be read only with the eyes. It was meant to be read with the heart, slowly, patiently, the way a lover reads a letter from someone they have waited their whole life to hear from. May Allah grant us hearts capable of that kind of reading, hearts polished enough to reflect the light this surah carries, and souls humble enough to keep walking deeper into mystery rather than stopping at the first comfortable answer.